A vacationing family encounters a car whose passengers were turned into corpses, accidentally falling into a dimensional space controlled by the monster's silver gun, which is indicated by an inverted rainbow. And to show its power, this monster kills another one that encroaches onto its domain. Violence? Please, you haven't seen Shin rip a cyborg's spine out of his body. And yet I would take scenes like that any day over the badly written garbage that was coming from Amazons. But yeah, there's not much to this one. Guts gets a request for help, Guts follows the family in and gets them out of the space, Tiga beats the monster which collapses its absolute territory, the end. The following episode, however, proves to be way worse, as Guts once more tracks down a supernatural creature called an Obiko, who has the ability to warp people to other locations, the superstition more than the actions of the entity inciting fear. Shinjo, as the one that's terrified of the supernatural, is of course the one attacked by it, only for him and tracking devices to be ejected from a shrine's well along the outskirts of the city. Eventually they catch on to the idea the entire plot is just to incite fear in people, for no specific reason. Okay, what they try to say is the Obiko did this to try and get its old home back, as much of the time you hear it talking about dem good old days, and how do dem kids get off my lawn, and whatnot to stop industrial renovation of the area, but they never once explain how the hell it will affect it. How will it be forgotten by the modern era when its existence has long been considered a myth that only recently tried to prove itself real? And how would scary people bring back the place it wants? Despite that, the ending is pretty sad, the entity changing into a giant beast, simply so in battle Tiga would put it out of its misery. The misery that wasn't really connecting, because of the portrayal and motivations not connecting. Episode 28 opens with the monster of the week being taken down, pathetically easily. Normal military forces coming to secure the creature, while the Guts team prepares for a critter operation, a plan to deal with a growing number of thundercloud gatherings of the entities that spawned the Gazort monsters, while also discussing ways to expand their operations to better deal with the increasing number of monster threats. Only for Reina to object. No. Not at all in this show. Pretty much every time they've tried to apply that this series, it's resulted in a case of science or what you're blaming as the cause does not work that way. The only case at best that would be applicable is the giant fish mutant changed into one by a underground nuclear test that, as described, is impossible to have been affected by such a circumstance, since Japan does not do underground nuclear testing, nor does any country that does it near a fault line where such radiation could escape. The only thing man can be blamed for in this show thus far can be waking some of these threats up, but a dormant threat is still a threat. And this statement sets the stage for this episode's idiocy and its broken Aesop, on how our own progress is causing all of our own problems. But it's not technological advancement that causes such crises, but abuse and ignorance of such. And that has rarely to never been shown in this series as more than a hand-waved explanation, while they otherwise sell the setting and society of the show as approaching a pseudo-utopia. But now they're proposing we need to go back to the olden times, before electricity, before industrialization, before we had the means to feed billions despite that era having been even more wasteful per person, and abandoning everything we've ever done to advance our race and help build what civility we have. In a world where doing that would leave them all helpless to every monster that ever attacks them. I'll go live with the other selfish, short-sighted, self-important alien elves of Star Trek Insurrection. Or get off your fucking high horse, you mouthpiece for the author. Seriously, every fucking person in this show acts out of character in this episode solely to be either a mouthpiece for the author's views, or be turned into a strawman antagonist for their socio-political agenda. Hori, the one who tried to communicate with the Gazorts despite them killing his friends and fellow scientists, is showcased as a short-sighted enabler of military's brutality. But Mayumi, who lost her fiancé, the love of her life, and so would more than have a justified vendetta against them, is very condescending to any violent action against these things, and spends the entire episode patronizing Yazumi, who in this episode is put on the front lines of all the battles when he is a service technician and communications officer. He is not a field combatant! Oh, and worse, since a lot of this is in reference to the Gazorts and what causes them to form, aka our electromagnetic transmissions, pollution of those energy bands, well, most of that is transmitted in the spectrums that host background radiation. And background radiation is something that literally everything generates. So if these monsters really are so sensitive to such electromagnetic transmissions that it's driving them crazy and are attacking humanity to get it to stop, as the episode postulates, then they would have gone insane long before humanity ever got involved. This is, by the way, when recapping the last two Gazort incidents, I left out their rationale to how those monsters form as being due to critters supposedly native to the ionosphere being driven to attack us by human-generated electromagnetic radiation and EM fields. Because the rationale for that is absolutely fucking stupid considering how low an energy state those ambient transmissions actually are, especially in comparison to their native environment of the ionosphere, which is highly electrically charged by solar radiation, as the ionosphere is where our planet's natural geomagnetic field prevents more hostile energy emissions from the sun from killing all of us. By absorbing all of that energy, it lets less than half of it through. So in comparison to the energy in that region of the atmosphere, our output, or even collection, which is the cited reason in episode 15 with them testing a solar panel meant to create a wireless energy collection system, should be nothing but a midnight snack in comparison, and not only not ever cause them to attack, but been completely under their radar since they would be used to inhabiting and eating in a much higher electrically charged range. I just left it out at that time because I would have rather addressed the nonsense science bullshit they're trying to justify this with all at one fucking time. Because this is essentially saying that someone that spends their entire lives sitting next to the speakers at rock concerts is being driven into a homicidal rage by hearing a kid listening to music on his headphones. To not even mention how most of the monsters released electromagnetic energy in excess of anything humanity produces, to the point it's often off the measurable scale. So if that really is the cause of their attacks, then why are the monsters not fighting and trying to kill each other instead of us? A few episodes ago, aliens masquerading as gods tried to murder everyone after trying to indoctrinate them into subservience. Except several times in the series, you have communicated with the monsters! Your universal translators have been adjusted before to do just that! This is a sequel episode to the one that first did that! You see what I'm putting up with on this one? It's like the writer just walked in, dropped the script off, and then walked out with even consulting the writing staff. Which is totally backed up by the rest of its content, as the big fight is between the monster they incapacitated and an army of conventional soldiers and militia. Yeah, this is the big revolutionary expansion of Guts' arsenal. Conventional weapons that they already know won't do jack on any monster they have ever encountered. So of course the operation would lead to everyone involved being slaughtered. But to come back to the viewpoint character of this being Yazumi, he is by far the most disrespected in this whole proceeding, due to him stupidly used as a field agent solely because he is its youngest member, so the author can yell at young people for not doing a damn thing about how the real world works, despite actually knowing how the real world works in the series. No! No episode! You do not get to use that line! He has not once echoed someone else's words without knowing of what they meant the entire episode. He has stated facts that goes against your proclamations of, this is the will of gods, and every other statement contradicted by past continuity.
What's most insulting about this? While all of these other personnel have been slaughtered needlessly by this monster to traumatize viewers, the actual Guts team has been outright ignoring them in favor of attacking the storms the critters gathered in, only for their attacks to be deflected in ways unexplained, and then they all leave!
The entire episode barely even related to the Gazorts at all. Again, just using them for the writer's agenda.
And this doesn't make any sense, since with how they feed, them leaving the Earth would result in them starving if the episode's proclamations about any of them were true. Which they are not. As far as I've found, Kyoto Kawasaki, the man responsible for not only writing, but also directing and doing the effects work for this episode, which were likewise terrible, has never written anything before this, and would only work on one episode of Tiga's sequel series, Dyna, before vanishing entirely from the genre.
Quite frankly, good. This is just an awful 20 minutes of television, and legitimately reaches a Shinichiro Shirakura production levels of missing the fucking point. And not only lying to, but insulting your audience while doing so. It is easily, by far, Tiga's worst episode. I almost just quit 4 minutes into it, and yet, I would still take this over any episode of Tiga's dub.
So let's cleanse our palate of utter idiocy with gratuitous J-pop.
Why is none of that subtitled?
This actually relates to the singer Maya Cruz, as she's popular. Mayumi is over her bitchiness streak, and Shinjo's skipping on taking her to a concert because she's training in the White Queen. And then something weird happens to him.
Oh, come on! That series hadn't even entered production yet!
Well, after that, Shinjo's left amnesiac and in recovery, Daigo passing along a copy of Maya's music from Mayumi to listen to...
crap. Now I am contractually obligated to play the following clip. Be my baby! Be my baby! I had been hoping to save that until I actually got to Kamen Rider Double. Nobody's perfect.
Well, it turns out Shinjo's amnesia is caused by him being possessed by an alien that's there to find the singer Maya Cruz. Turns out 15 years before the current events, this alien and its mother had to leave behind its sister, and placed her essence inside of a girl who was dying in a car accident, allowing both to survive onwards from that day. This new amalgam entity carrying on the girl's wish to be a singer with the life given. Unfortunately, the reason it's taken so long for them to come back is their race ended up being hunted to extinction by the Natan, and now they're among their last. And their lack of mercy all done for their vision of justice.
Yeah, you're nowhere near an idiotic Zack Snyder movie that alienates its protagonist's core characteristics.
Shinja is mortally wounded by the Natan, which is quickly killed in one of the shortest giant monster brawls in the series. But fortunately, the alien uses its last power to heal Shinjo in recompense for using its body. Maya, though, is left all alone, dedicating one last song to her lost family. As Rena takes a day off to go to the zoo, some unfortunate character assassination from the worst episode in the series is shown to carry over, wondering if they could contain the monsters they fight instead of killing them.
Yes, she is considering if they can cage giant monsters. Hey Pacific Rim, how'd that work out for you? I'm gonna take that as badly.
Still, she and Daigo are shown having fun on their day off, at least until the King of Mole Rats appears. Fortunately, the monster is shown to be one of the rare benign ones, just an animal mutated because of, well anyways, it's just really hungry, and this allows Reina to show compassion to the creature that isn't completely fucking stupid. And even better, Tiga shows he has the ability to reduce the size of the thing to a more manageable and easier to feed form, resulting in a win-win situation of no monster murder, and it gets to eat.
Except, if he can do that whenever he pleases, then why doesn't he do that with other monsters if killing them is now suddenly a big deal, even though they still kill monsters past this?
Still, there's a funny story involving the mole rat. The website Toho Kingdom, in trying to recreate some discarded concept material for an abandoned monster for the movie Godzilla vs. Biollante, made use of a still image of the creature and doctored it to how the abandoned design was described, said to be an update to the Showa monster, Talos. Thing is, many so-called reliable sources took the image as gospel, despite words on the page of this being fan concept art. And now, to this day, people use that image against the makers of that film for not using what they think was a fully completed monster suit when they could have, despite Toho never making such a suit.
Photoshop! Causing more problems than it solves!
A quarantine is placed on the base after a group of scientists collapse. An investigation reveals the cause is a slime in a space rock they found at the South Pole.
If this turns into the thing, I'm out of here.
While the slime mutates into an organism who escapes into a computer. It reveals it's a life form engineered to scrub carbon dioxide from atmospheres and to propagate oxygen, but was so effective at its job, it ended up suffocating its creators with oxygen poisoning.
Except oxygen poison really doesn't work that way. They have to be exposed to high volumes of concentrated pure oxygen in a very short period, but as there are other gases in an ambient atmosphere which prevent that from happening, that'd only be possible if it also absorbed all other gaseous compounds into itself, which it doesn't. As such, if you replace all the carbon dioxide in a given room with oxygen, yeah, not that much would change and those scientists would not have been poisoned as the room was not a closed system.
No, the bigger issue in how this creature would have realistically killed everyone is without CO2, any plant life would have died out, as they need CO2 for the photosynthetic process. And without plant life, any types of food would have gone away, and all life would have died. But this creature never got that far. It just decided to attack the sources of CO2 and killed them, now drawing power from the base so it can expand itself enough to reach out and touch people in awful places. Hori directs the team through to the main power room to cut it off, but while they succeed, it escapes when Reina accidentally leaves with it, but it's absorbed enough power to grow to kaiju scale, which then proceeds to be immolated. Next, a giant bird monster attacks an installation at Zelda Point.
What? Don't look at me.
When Guts investigates, they learn a bit of the history of the place. A scientist named Dr. Nezi creating a highly volatile solution, on the tier of nuclear explosions in fact, called Zelda gas, which during his study of it had some of it explode, killing his daughter. After which he shelved his research and everything he concocted was sealed up in the outpost to prevent it from possibly endangering anyone ever again. Which in turn means that whatever the bird is doing, they think it will only result in bad. Thing is, however, the bird kaiju is Sheila, the pet of Nezi's dead daughter, who was mutated in the explosion.
How futuristic nitroglycerin turns a cockatoo into Birdramon is a bit beyond me, especially since it's established to have no mutagenic properties.
What's even more baffling is how Sheila remembers the incident and is attacking the outpost for revenge.
It was a bird. Even if its mutation gave it a massive intelligence boost, I highly doubt it would either remember the incident, nor be able to understand its cause, nor be able to track down a location it's likely never been to.
Hell, it's also revealed to be doing this now because it's dying, not in the 20 years it's had. Dr. Nezi is also dying, but there's more of a nobility shown to his coming end, in that in penance for being the cause of his daughter's death, he's spent every day since that for 20 years trying to engineer a way to safely destroy his own creation. Still, there's a decent plot thread here about being able to move on from a tragedy until the cause for such is wiped from the world. And sure enough, amidst the battle to prevent the bird from reaching the outpost,
Come back to me! I made you a muffin!
the bird somehow absorbs all of the Zelda gas, taking the dying Nezzy, and with Tiga's assistance, flies out into space to safely destroy the compound, dying in the Why do you keep doing this, Iota? Why are you so terrible at this? Episode 33 opens with,
We can't stop here. This is bat country.
yeah, this bat is a vampire bat. Emphasis on vampire. And unlike the toy, which does very weird things with vampiric entities, Subarai is going straight with this. The bat taking human form and creating its thralls.
Or should I say, harem?
Because the only ones it bites and turns are women. The reporter who shouted Munakata early on appears again, wanting the man's help in investigating the incident, as it's revealed his... I'm pretty sure it's a loved one, but the specific connection I don't remember being given. Well, anyways, the traditional vampire weaknesses are in effect, especially as this series hits the Hikai ni Nare button with gusto. But there's a legitimately good scene in here where the reporter manages to reawaken the humanity in his loved one, and knowing she's now a monster, voluntarily kills herself to absolve the sin she's been afflicted with. Appropriately, before the kaiju dies, it is this man that has the last line, and it's a good one.
Say cheese!
I said it was good. I didn't say it wasn't cliché. Episode 34 has the side plots getting into how the Guts team came together, since they weren't assigned to counter kaiju and extraterrestrial stuff until the beginning of the show, and yet long before that they were more than aware of extraterrestrial threats. Retcons? What's that? General Sawai goes missing, only to show up on an abandoned island with other international representatives of the TPC, and unilaterally declare that they have taken over the world.
Of course!
And that is really not how government succession works. The TPC is an international peacekeeping organization, yes, but it is not a replacement for government in this world. And this action by them has cut them directly off from any support from their organization, which straight up stands against them. I mean, obviously they're being controlled or something has taken their form, but in obviously the single most idiotic way possible.
Because no one buys this. Not even Yoshioka, the warmongering general who argues with Sawai all series, thinks that he would under any circumstances go through with this. Yoshioka tries to order Guts to attack, but their mission statement is clear, and they're merely a rescue and counter kaiju force. And even if Sawai is so obviously brainwashed, since they have no proof of it, they can't do anything. However, Yazumi slows down the video footage to show Sawai is sporting the derp eyes, meaning either someone is using his form, or he has been browsing 1996's equivalent to 4chan. Are you a wizard? With this proof, the Ardesse's launch is authorized, but due to a barrier that's gone up around the island, they also need another way in, this being the Dolphin 202, a submarine designed by Yoshioka, so he's coming along to pilot it. As though he has his animosity with Sawai, he ultimately does respect the man.
And we've been waiting to see that thing for 20 episodes. In episode 15, Tiga changed its opening sequence to feature shots of all of its scale model vehicles, and it took them this long to actually get around to introducing it.
While using the ship, briefly, Daigo and Yoshioka get inside the barrier, and sure enough, Daigo destroys the barrier, blowing back up in to defeat the aliens, with Yoshioka rescuing all the taken officials, him and Sawai showing a mutual respect for each other. However, these aliens were recognized by the organization, the Asian division arriving with one they've dubbed Sleeping Beauty, which has been in their care for 24 years. Everybody begins to ask the question of why it is this past year they've suffered so many monster attacks, but said question leads nowhere. As such is waylaid by Rena seeing a giggling phantasm of the Grey following her before collapsing, her dismissal for rest leading to the stalking entity abducting her. The reason the alien was brought out was in part so the team could try and find its ship, which is done in short order. But then suddenly the alien's pod reaches insane temperatures, and its ship unburies itself for no explicable reason, alongside taking Rena's form in front of Daigo.
Okay, what the hell is even going on here?
It gives the cliché "join us, Khan," Daigo naturally refusing it, and it gets angry, fusing with its ship to turn into a monster. And as Daigo's enraged while being Tiga, he simultaneously defends it from Guts' attacks while beating the crap out of it himself. Why? Well, Reina's in that ship.
Which makes absolutely no sense to me. The thing astral projecting itself and knocking out Reina to copy and use her form? Fine. But until Daigo showed up in the chamber it was superheating its box to get out of it, it was still stuck in the box! There was no time it could escape to kidnap her. What the hell?
And this makes even less sense, as after Tiga defeats it, Reina just wakes up back at home none the wiser to anything that happened.
Seriously, I'm used to this kind of evil dream self thing from Chiaki Konaka, who did write this specific episode. ADR Jerry, anyone? And it is well presented in its drama, it's just, the connect the dots puzzle much of his work ends up being for his fans just don't connect here at its conclusion.
To once more cleanse the palate, we have a Yuzumi episode which begins with him dreaming of an incident involving an old woman, before the case of the week reveals a Mirage tanker ship appearing out of nowhere.
My god, the Time Holes from Time Ranger showed up 4 years early! I wonder what that means for the space-time continuum.
And yeah, the hole starts pouring lots of things through, and takes them just as quickly, the entire region being cordoned off, except for a schoolgirl that appears and faints, who is taken in by Guts, and baffled by everything around her.
手塚ゆりと申します。大正4年8月16日生まれです。
Yep, that explains it. Jumping 81 years into the future has got to result in some major culture shock. Just ask Marty McFly. Especially with everyone you know likely being either long dead or about to go a-knocking. Yuzumi tries to help the girl find her home, but the region's changed so much in almost a century that not only is she lost, she's freaking out, even when trying to eat Subway. Ugh.
Yeah, you know what they call Subway in my home state of glorious Wisconsin? Going out of business because we've got a superior sub sandwich chain. Hashtag not sponsored.
Unfortunately, not only are the time holes expanding, more are appearing thanks to the Monster of the Week, Rory desperately trying to find a way to close them, which is eventually found, as expected, to be killing the monster causing it. There's a bit of a moral quandary involved, as they don't know what would happen to anyone or thing that's been brought forward in time, at worst everything aging an instant to death. However, as everything fades out following the creature's death, Yuzumi remembers the old woman from the beginning, and realizes a pendant she left with him contains a picture of this girl, meaning everything that's occurred was a closed time loop, and she lived out her life back in her own time. Episode 37 is a return of an original series writer, Akioji Soji, and his writing style does not complement the series at all.
Wait, no, that was not an old series that...
Mainly as it appears to be stylized like an older Ultraman episode, the out-of-place overuse of narration, the imagery of the subject matter tangentially related to the episode. Oh, and how everyone was written as a cardboard cutout.
Wait, no, that was not an old series thing. Remember, I watched the original Ultraman in prep for reviewing this show.
Oh, and everything. Literally everything in the episode is at a Dutch angle, with the camera smeared in something. Petroleum jelly? I don't even know, but it makes so much of this one physically difficult and painful to watch.
Battlefield Earth looked better than this episode. Battlefield Earth!
I mean, I could have bought it if this was meant to be all part of a dream state caused by the monster of the week. But no, its plan is to prepare an immigration to Earth for its species.
Which actually ends up making this episode almost unwatchably stupid in context. Need I remind everyone of my remastered Black RX videos from earlier this year? How the villains did not need to be villains if they valued their people's lives over actually invading, since there's enough uninhabitable regions on Earth and advanced people with terraforming tech could make lush. Yeah, that's this thing's plan.
And they need to move because their world was undergoing desertification, and were drawn to Earth because of its vast quantities of water.
Or, you could take water from any number of locations in space back to your world or set up a trade agreement. There literally is no reason for these aliens to be hostile.
Nor for them to kidnap and torture Megumi for information after they capture her when most of the team is out on a day off because they spent a month searching for these assholes after their spaceship arrived. Speaking of, their day off is to go watch the Sakura tree blossoms fall. On what is transparently obviously a set with, once again, more horrible cinematography than one of the worst movies ever made. And that's not even getting into how openly derogatory the episode is to Megumi. Jisoji's traditional values with respect to the place of woman obviously on display here. Daigo comes in and saves Megumi, with the final battle being a kabuki play.
What?
I'm seriously not leaving anything important out. This is just another one that's straight up baffling to me. It's almost like an art house film. Back in more sane material, Guts' competency is put into question following a series of monster mirages results in no action by them. As they have no evidence, it's not a prank. Coupled with their over-reliance on Tiga, well, the investigating officer, Tatsumora, seems to have it out for them. In reality, however, as Megumi learns, they are all being used as test subjects by Tatsumora to produce data on human fear responses due to an incident about a month before this, and what he saw as a chaotic evacuation.
They
were running for their lives, you asshole!
So yeah, his entire operation is turning the populace into lab rats.
Which is not only unethical and morally bankrupt, it's also 6 kinds of illegal. I'm not kidding, doing this is an arrestable offense.
Meaning Megumi now being forced to follow orders and not tell anyone about this because she's in the know makes her culpable in this crime, doing nothing to even try to tip the others off to this, as they proceed to investigate a real monster that has the same MO as Tsukimura's operation. And yeah, this monster wasn't in his plans at all, meaning Tsukimura endangered people's lives by the spreading of rumors and lies, which prevented Guts from investigating a real case of a monster that can render itself incorporeal. Daigo eventually reveals that this is a real threat to the others, but with the creature's ability to create illusions and swap between them, it takes Megumi entering the battle herself in an act of absolving her guilt for following Tsukimura's orders when she should not have, which helps them get rid of it. Sawai is not happy to learn about any of this, rejecting Megumi's resignation and properly reprimanding Tsukimura for his conduct, the presumption being he is arrested for his illegal activities. And the ultimate irony in the whole matter? His fear and rumor-mongering? It didn't even work. We then meet a man named Makio Kirino during a monster attack, watching as Guts fights it while simultaneously flashing back to his childhood when he was called a monster for no reason at all.
I know I keep saying that a lot in these videos, but it's true.
He sends a message to Daigo, as he knows his secret identity as Tiga, revealing that he hates him, for badly explained reasons. See, Makio is an Esper, able to see the future, and has been persecuted for that power because he wants to play a game challenging Daigo to not transform into Tiga when the monster they were fighting next attacks, in exchange for foreknowledge of where it will appear next.
You know, he's got a point.
The battle rages, but as events move on, Daigo can't keep to the game, not with people put in danger while he has the power to help them, specifically Reina. But despite losing the game, Daigo's resilience in the fight makes Makio have a change of heart and help him, forfeiting his winnings of forcing Daigo to reveal his secret identity to everyone, and instead helping him defeat the monster. What I'm getting from the poorly related subtext of the episode is Makio had become disenfranchised to the idea of a selfless hero due to his own life experiences of persecution, and seeing someone else be praised for their powers likely, from his perspective, was seen as plain unfair. But seeing the honesty of Daigo's resolve might have made him change his mind about everything.
It's a nice idea, at least. It's easy to become bitter and cynical to the world around you the worse or more unfulfilling your life has been. And it's easy to have that affect one's perception of heroism until they see them as little better than the villains they face. But then again, who would be stupid enough to show heroes being villains acting in total opposition to what they believe in and stand for? I think I'm done here.
And then we have another Akio Jusoji script. Already? And it's about a man being neglected by his significant other, to the point she cheats on him.
Sexism? Boo!
However, due to cosmic radiation, which has not been a thing in this series, this stress, anger, and collapse of his relationship is expressed externally, and mapped onto reality in the form of a giant monster, like you do. This ends up being a monster which Daigo can only defeat by taking the fight into the world of dreams.
As far as I know, none of Tiga's powers involve dreamwalking.
This is an art house film. I mean, there's a place for that kind of thing, certainly. It's too out of place with the rest of the cinematography and tone of the series, to an even more extreme degree than the other ones I've been calling out for it.
Next week, however, we'll finally wrap these reviews with what this show has I've not really been building up to. I'll see you there.